and boom goes the dynamite.
Happy Friday! Welcome to another episode of Daily Dive. I'm your host, Renee Washington. We've got games, and more games to get into here on Daily Dive. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to follow us at Daily Dive Lax across all things social media. And we've got plenty of picks to get into. So let's jump right in. Producer Mike joining me for our top story presented by Daily Dive Store. You can scan the QR code that is on your screen here to be sure to check out the merchandise we are selling at the Daily Dive Store. Now, lots of games this weekend. The first game we've got to look at could have been, but is not going to be, our Daily Dive game of the week. The Saskatchewan Rush taking on the San Diego Seals. This is a game that will be also airing, which is exciting, on ESPN2. A must-see game, Producer
Mike? 2 weeks ago, yeah. I feel like these two teams have been kind of forgotten. I know the Seals have one loss. They're supposedly the best team in the Western Conference, but we both don't even have them number one. It's for a reason. They play very forgettable games. They don't show that they have a big three or big four brewing. They show they're just good enough to get by teams they're supposed to. For Saskatchewan, they started off like 2 or 3-1 or something like that, and now it's like they had a tough one against the Vancouver Warriors, but they won. Against the Desert Dogs, but they won. Well, that's all cute and all. You got to win better than that. That'll be a Daily Dive game of the week. I hope that these teams, I know they're going to get up for this game, but I hope it's good enough to where fans will want to come back for more box lacrosse.
Yeah, I agree. I think as of 2 weeks ago, this absolutely would have been a game to watch in our Daily Dive game of the week, but I think that there are two teams, unfortunately, trending in the wrong direction. The Seals are still sitting at 6-1, and that's pretty wild to think of when they're not playing great lacrosse, but still 6-1. I love the question about what we think about the Thunderbirds game. We actually will be getting into that later on in the show.
Yeah,
so
unlike another national broadcast, we actually predict all the games and not just which one we like for the week.
We are going to be predicting every single game. I forget to handle the person that just commented. I feel like it was Mark is the name, but either way, Mark T. Smith is the vibe I'm getting, but I don't know if that's what that stands for. Either way, MRT, I can't read. MRTK Smith 6. We're going to be getting into the Riptide Thunderbirds later on in the show. Stay tuned. We'll be giving our predictions on that game as well. But look, as we talked about with the San Diego Seals at 6-1, the Rush at 4-3, I'm going to pick the Seals to win this one. It's not an easy one to pick because I think both teams have been struggling. You look at the Rush and their loss to Calgary last weekend. You look at how the Seals have been playing, holding on by a third of that 6-1 record, but just having one loss. But I think they're still going to squeeze by the Rush because I think these are two teams that are in a similar situation right now. So that being said, let's talk about the Roughnecks, who knocked off the Rush last weekend. Calgary faces the Vancouver Warriors after sweeping their doubleheader weekend. 2 big wins over the defending champs in the Mammoth, knocking off the Rush, both games at home. They now return to the floor to face the 1-8 Vancouver Warriors. Now, Jake Elliott, Warriors analyst, was on the show earlier this week talking about how this is a sleeper game where the Warriors might be able to squeeze out the win, especially since regardless what either team's standings are, their records, their results, in past years, it has been consistent that when these two teams face off, it's always a fight. It's unpredictable. Either team can win. But I'm still going to go with the Roughnecks on this one, Mike. I agree with Jake that this game will probably be a surprise for people, but not in a surprise in the final results. I think the surprise will be, it might be closer than people expect. The hard part is Calgary has already defeated Vancouver twice. They did beat them 14-5.
In the building they're playing in. Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough to beat a team 3 times, but I think that the way Vancouver's playing and the way Calgary's playing, I'm going to go with Calgary winning this one.
I'm also going to go with the under 23.5, but I'm going to go with the Roughnecks to win. The reason I'm going under is because Calgary just played a back-to-back on the same weekend, although it was both at home, and Vancouver is traveling from Texas. So I think we're going to struggle with offense. I think it's going to be 12-9 Calgary. I also think the Rush are going to win. For those that did not, Renee was so excited for her Seals pick.
Oh,
I do have Alex Bouquet shutting it down, by the way, 12-11 for those wondering.
You never officially said that you were picking the Rush. My apologies. I felt like you said it.
Just know the people want bouquet. I think they're going to get a big bouquet, but that's not how it's spelled, obviously.
A bouquet for bouquet. So Mike, you've got the Rush winning in the Seals Saskatchewan game. You've got the Roughnecks winning. I have the same pick as you with Calgary winning over Vancouver. And then I am going to be different because it's time for me to close the gap and say that the Seals are going to knock off Saskatchewan Rush. Well, like we mentioned before, we do have more games to get into. Next segment, we've got to break down some other action across the NLL, starting with the winless Georgia Swarm taking on the Toronto Rock. Stay tuned for more coming up on Daily Dive. Welcome back to Daily Dive. I'm your host, Renee Washington, joined by producer Mike. We've been giving our picks from around the league heading into this week's action. We started off with the Rush versus the Seals, as well as the Roughnecks taking on the Warriors. Well, we've got more to get into. Wow, my screen was a little fuzzy in the opening segment. What a difference, what a difference. So segment 2 presented by Fanatics. You can check out the link in our social media bio to see all the NLL merchandise we've got at Fanatics, because we've got more picks to get into. Bum, bum, bum. Starting with the Georgia Swarm, winless at 0-6, taking on the 7-2 Toronto Rock. Now, we had a chance to hear what's going on behind the scenes with Swarm analyst Brandon Joseph talking about what's going on in their winless start and the reason behind that. Producer Mike, is that reason enough for them to get a win over the Rock this weekend?
Okay. There is an issue in Georgia, and it's involves goalies, and even Brennan Joseph touched on as well. Georgia has no goalie. They still 6 games in have no goalie. I know the inconsistency has been there. I know that Mitch Belisle mentioned that on the other show that doesn't get into every single game, but he I'm sorry, but he did say that this schedule's been inconsistent. That has been a talk around the town. Oh, well, I think Rock win it 14-12. I think the Rock are going to start hot. I think Georgia's going to make it close late. We just barely hit the over of 24.5. But I think Rock win it. I think it's going to be a little bit close, but it's not going to be as close as the final score will indicate.
Yes, that's a good point. Brendan Joseph was talking a lot about the, between Miles Thompson being injured and trying to figure out a goalie. There's just some things that Georgia's still trying to figure out. Now, what I will say is Georgia's had much closer results of their 0-6 start. What I thought was interesting is all but 2 of those games came down to 3 or less goals. They lost by 9 to the Bandits. They lost by 5. Every other game has been a 2-goal game, a 1-goal game. It's been very close. So I anticipate this will be close, but I don't anticipate them winning. I'm actually going with the Toronto Rock. I know I was teeing it up as if I was leaning towards Georgia. This is not their chance to get a first win. I don't know when it's going to happen, to be honest, but it's not this week. What I will say is the Toronto Rock, I'm believing. I'm a believer. Now I'm a believer. Cue the song.
Shrek has bangers.
I do. Yeah, there you go. It was a nice Shrek, a great song in Shrek. I do think they're just going to be too much for Georgia, plain and simple. But I do anticipate a closer game, maybe like a 3-goal game. Well, another game that could be close, especially as both teams are 2-5 coming into the weekend. The Las Vegas Desert Dogs are taking on the Albany Firewolves. Now, this one could go either way, Mike. So I'm going to let you jump in first with your thoughts on who wins this one in the battle off of the struggle bus for these 2 teams, trying to seek win number 3.
That's right. We're doing the dog chance again. Albany is 0-3 at home and doesn't have a good on-paper team. I'm going to drop this mic, but not. It's just figurative mic drop there. So give me the money line because I don't know how. I guess Albany's favored because Las Vegas is traveling. That's my betting expertise here. I went 6-0 on picks last week. But no, I think Albany is. They're nothing. They don't scare me. Like a Firewolf. Whoa, what is this, a Pokemon card? No. That was mean.
That just made me think of, what was it, Blue Eyes White Dragon? That was a
Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yu-Gi-Oh. Ah, darn it.
You,
Pikachu.
I know,
Let me
right?
keep it simple.
The Firewolf.
Squirtle. Let me keep it simple. All right. I'm going to just be devil's advocate and go with the Firewolves, to be honest. That's
one howls and one barks. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, it's a wolf. It's a wolf. Yeah, I just feel like this game could go either way. I think the Desert Dogs is a new team on the block, though. Got to give them some credit in how they started off their season of just being competitive in the NLL. I think the Firewolves, I actually thought were gonna win last weekend, but what do I know? I feel like they've got something we're missing, and I don't know why they struggle at home, but I just feel like this team should be better than 2-5. So maybe this week is the week that they right the ship a little bit more and figure things out. Oh.
Vegas has a win against Vancouver, so that doesn't count. And they have a win against who else? I forgot.
I actually don't
know. It hasn't been important. They've been impressive in stretches, and I predict the stretch to be a little bit longer than the Albany Firewolf stretch. That's all I got.
Okay. Yeah, I could flip a coin on this game. I'm not really sure. I will not. I'm going to stick with the Firewolves, though, and definitely am picking them to win this one. Now, final game of this segment before we get into our – I'm sorry, we've got 2 more because we've got to share our game of the week. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Wings taking on the Buffalo Bandits. Now, for Philly sports, we need a redemption. We need a win after a disappointing loss in the Super Bowl by the Eagles. So is this a chance for Philadelphia sports to get some redemption and get a big win? Because this would be a huge win for the Wings to knock off the 7-2 Bandits, who we both have in our power rankings as the top team in the NLL right now. Not sure about Josh Byrne, but what we do know is Dane Smith is going to be out there. You're going to have DeHoga out there. You're going to have Matt between the pipes. Plenty of other pieces there. Mike, Wings or Bandits?
Okay, so first of all, the under 24.5. There's one key thing on why I do think this game is not going to be some shootout, even though we have Mitch Jones and Josh Byrne there, because Matt Vince and Zach Higgins are playing very well in the goals for their respective teams. And like I said, I know Byrne is back. I know Philadelphia added Mitch, and look, he like 6 points in his first game. But I don't know if we hit 25. I think Bandit's going to win. Because last time we saw Josh Byrne, he might have been 1-Aing Dane Smith, who obviously took over, and we'll see later on my MVP ranks. But I'm going to go with the Bandits to get a 13-11 win. It's going to be close. I don't think Philadelphia has enough yet, but this could be a big statement win for Philadelphia. I would not be surprised if they did get the upset here.
I'm so tempted to pick them to upset.
Do it.
I feel like for whatever reason, when the Wings face the Bandits, it's always a little bit closer than people anticipate.
Do it for Jalen Hurts.
That hurts. I'm gonna go with the Bandits though. I'm all about picking an upset. I can't pick it on this game. I too can see Philadelphia beating Buffalo though, so I would not be surprised if that happens. I do expect this to be a close game. I think the exciting thing with Josh coming back is Josh is coming back. So had this been a game where they did not get Josh back, I actually might pick the Wings. But I think that with his return to the floor, there's always that new, when you've been injured, there's that new sense of appreciation for being out there. You have a little extra pep in your step, a little extra gas in the tank. And I think Josh Byrne will just ignite the Bandits in a way that's going to lift them over the Wings. But our Daily Dive game of the week, after dropping a loss last weekend to Calgary, the Colorado Mammoth take on Panther City, who got a nice win. And Panther City, a team that we've talked about, an honorable mention team, maybe not in the top 5 for power rankings yet, but definitely closing in, especially with having 2 of the top points production across the league on their roster. I'm picking Panther City for this one without a doubt, no hesitation. Mike, are we agreeing on this game, or are you seeing the Mammoth knocking off Panther City?
So when I handicap, they call it like whenever like you predict the game before you read the Vegas spread. I was actually saying they're not going to go lower than 22.5, and they didn't. And I'm still going to go under that. Both these teams are physical. Both these teams have a good goalie. Both these teams play good defense. That being said, though, if we had told each other before the season when these two teams met, no matter where, if you had told me Panther City was going to be favored against the defending champs at one point, but they are. So I'm not taking that bait. I'm taking Panther City to just win 11-8.
Ooh, a close one.
And the ugliest game of the week, but it's our game of the week. So
I think it's definitely going to be the best game of the week. It's a great choice for our daily dive game of the week. I think it's going to be a chess match. I think we're going to see some spectacular plays, saves. It's going to give us a little bit of everything. So I'm excited for this one. I'm excited for all of these games. And I know that we had a request to talk about the Thunderbirds and the Riptide, and we haven't yet. Saving the best for last, possibly, because we've got a Sunday game this weekend, which is always exciting. Sunday fun day. So coming up, we've got to get our final pick, but also we're going to share some thoughts on MVP in our last brew here on Daily Dive. Stay tuned. Coming up. Welcome back to Daily Dive. I'm your host, Renee Washington, joined by producer Mike. Because it's Friday, a fun day, we have been giving our picks for the weekend, talking through the different games, every single game this upcoming weekend in NLL action, sharing our thoughts on them, our predictions, who's going to be winning. Well, it's time to get into our last brew, presented by B-Res Coffee Company. Our final segment of the day, presented by B-Res Coffee Company, where you can check out all the samples, flavors, and exciting new things that B-Res Coffee Company has to offer, and use code DailyDive at checkout, and it will be sure to help you get through that Monday to Friday grind.
Last brew of the week, by the way.
What's that?
The last brew of the week. It is Friday.
Okay, I see what you did there, Mike. You came through. It is our last brew of the week.
No, I don't know about all that, but we'll figure it out.
All right. Well, we've got to talk about the MVP race, but I first actually want to get into our game. I feel like let's jump into that game. I'm going to flip the script on you here. Let's talk about this game first, because the MVP conversation in itself, we need to give ourselves plenty of time to dive into it. Now, Sunday's game, and shout out to MRT Smith 6 on Twitter. Oh, I was so close. I forgot the K. MRTK Smith 6 on YouTube, who reached out asking about this game. Well, let's talk about Sunday's matchup between the Thunderbirds and the Riptide. Now, Halifax sitting at 4-5, closing on 500, a team that I also have been talking about on the show as a sleeper. A team that is going to, I think, as we get further into the season, surprise some people, climb the rankings. The New York Riptide and Jeff Teat are sitting at 2-6, not the start they want to the season, but as they face off this weekend, Mike, who do you think is winning this one?
So, Halifax is the only team that has scored 30 or more goals in 3 quarters this year. The quarter they don't do it in is the third quarter. So if you think this game's over at halftime, just wait a minute, because the Riptide might make a furious comeback. But then in the end, they're going to run it up again. 16-10 Thunderbirds. I think New York's offense has been I don't want to say way better, but Jeff Teat's been more free to operate without Callum Crawford for whatever reason that is. But whatever it is, he's looked very good. But Halifax is just, they have 6 players over 30 points. That doesn't even make any sense. But those guys, that's an all-around roster. And you said it was going to be one of your top 5 teams. This would be the team that I think breaks through, especially if they get like a 5-goal win. And I think they could get a 5-goal win.
You know, Halifax is one of the lone teams to defeat Rochester. They've definitely been able to score. And as you talk about, when you have several players across your lineup that are higher than 30 points, that says a lot about just how talented this team is. Randy Stotts has been phenomenal in the way he started nearing 50 points. He's at 14 goals, 33 assists. I definitely have to lean towards Halifax. I could see the Riptide winning this one, though, to be honest. And I'm very hesitant because I know look, for everybody tuning in, producer Mike is beating me in the pick. So I've got to take some gambles to close the gap, to be honest. I can't play it safe. Sometimes I got to take that leap of faith on some of these upsets or games that maybe we don't expect to go one way. I could see the Riptide winning this one, and I want to pick this game for the Riptide, but I've already taken we've been the same on a lot of picks. I'm going to go Halifax. Halifax is a team, much like Panther City, who we were talking about in the last segment. They've got goal scorers. They've got production. They've got a lot of pieces there that I think we are just skimming the surface, and we're going to be talking about them a lot more. In my opinion, I can see them being a team you hate to face in the playoffs. You know, this is a team that might knock you off. So I think this is definitely a must-needed win for them to solidify themselves as being consistent and also a top team in the league. And it will move them to 500 on the season. So I'm going to go Thunderbirds.
If that's how that thing sounds.
I feel like a Thunderbird's a big, ferocious type of bird. Not like a tweet tweet.
You know what a Riptide sounds like? Well, not really, because it's not doing it much this year.
Oh, no! This Riptide's more like a ripple right now.
Oh, the New York Ripples. Boy, we got it. That was a good one. That was good.
Halifax is I'm thinking they're going to win this one. But wouldn't be surprised if the Riptide have a couple more big wins in them, just not this weekend. All right, so we've talked about our games and our picks. Be sure to share your thoughts on who you feel is going to be winning this weekend. Plenty of action going on this weekend. Lots of games all weekend that you can check out. And so be sure to comment, share your thoughts on Week 12 with our first game Friday nights, 2 nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Calgary, Vancouver. So we'll see who is correct with our picks. Hoping this is my week to close the gap a little bit because producer Mike swept last week and also got the NFL Super Bowl prediction right. So whatever. Who cares? I'm not mad. It's not me, it's you.
Will you MVP?
All right, so let's get into the MVP conversation. Our final last brew of Daily Dive today. We've talked about it a little bit this week, especially as we were talking through stats and numbers, and with having a discussion around the Rochester Nighthawks, and Connor Fields was a name that came up that should absolutely be included in the MVP conversation. So let's talk about it. First things first, Mike, who are your top 3 MVP frontrunners as of today, Friday, February 17th?
Because I just crapped on the Riptide or the Ripples, should I say? Who? Jeff Teat is not in the top 3, but he's one of what I'm calling notables. As is Rylan Hartley, who I could not put in there. Will Malcolm of Panther City and Josh Byrne of Buffalo. It's not his fault he got hurt. Number 3 for me, friend of the show, Nick Rose. If I know, like Cody Jansen came on here and sang the praises of Alex Bouquet and tried to say, well, their save percentage is pretty close. No, bump all that. Ty Merrow told me he's like doubling up in terms of like advanced analytics of like what his goalie is, like what he's actually doing. So I'm gonna go with Ty Merrow and put Nick Rose in there. Number 2, because of Josh Burns' injury, one of the former multiple-time league MVPs, Dane Smith, is at number 2. But number 1, I say crazy. Brendan McDaniel sold me on a lot of things, like Rochester jumping one spot in my power rankings. But he noticed not only has Ron Hartley gotten better, this team plugged Connor Fields and became a contender. Until they start losing again, he's the MVP leader in my opinion. I don't see how you could say anybody else because, like I said, maybe I'm drinking the sauce of, oh, they were so bad last year. They're still a top team in the NLL. It's not like they're middle of the pack. They're a top team. That matters. Connor Fields, you are the MVP, at least for me.
That does matter to an extent because I've had this conversation many times in many MVP discussions. It's not a team award. And so I think we have to also preface it with, if we have to say MVP based on it being a team award, which it should, I think Connor Fields absolutely has many direct reasons why he'd be number 1. You took a team that was below 500 last year. They're now top in the league. They start off the season 6-0. You can easily say as you insert him into Rochester, you see the immediate impact. They are 7-2 right now. But for all the analytics heavy people, it is still an award that is based on your individual production. So we could have an MVP conversation versus I don't even know what else you would call it. Top performer conversation. I'm going to go Tom Schreiber at my number 3. I definitely think that, again, we're looking at production. Tom Schreiber is on one of those 7-2 teams since we have a trio of them, and also sitting at 27 goals, 34 assists. He's also made broken some records with Toronto for most assists in the game. He's got some other accolades that he's hit this season, and he's consistently been the guy for Toronto. And this season alone has been a big reason why when you look at even his 59 loose balls, he's a big reason why Toronto is sitting at 7-2. This is a team that honestly does not always get enough discussion around them. Putting him at number 3. I also agree Jeff Teat is not an MVP candidate right now. And not just because the Riptide only have 2 wins, just because I don't think he's been consistent enough. An MVP, you have to look at overall across your games, what's your production like, and you do have to be out there, unfortunately. Being out for a few games does take you out of that conversation, Josh Byrne. So that's why I have at number 2, Connor Fields. Connor Fields with 28 goals, 26 assists on another 7-2 team. I do think it does matter how your team is doing because you can have the top points, but if your team's in last place, are you really an MVP? So I'm going to put Connor Fields there. That's why Will Malcolm is not on my list. Definitely an honorable mention. Definitely as Panther City climbs the rankings, will insert himself into that conversation. And Dane Smith is still the front runner. He is head and shoulders above everybody in terms of stats. For points specifically, 19 goals, 53 assists, 51 loose balls. He's someone that has been leading the NLL. I think the reigning MVP is still making a case for it now. But again, to your point about Connor Fields, it's a question of what are we really basing it on? What is the criteria for MVP? I've been told many times it's an individual award. So going off of individuals, for me, Dane, Connor, Tom, in that order.
I do want to mention that Tom Schreiber did not make my list because he's shooting like 20%. And after doing my big research, I could not do that. Connor Fields has 31% shooting, which is leads the players of 70 shots on goal or more. And he's still got most goals, which is insane. As for Dane Smith, I would not be shocked if he is everyone's front runner right now. I think, I might be drinking the Rochester Kool-Aid. It's ugly green color, but I might be drinking it because they were so bad last year, plug him and they look great. But Dane Smith, it's really crazy how he has a podcast with a dude who got hurt, and now because he got hurt, that's why Dane's probably number 1 in most people's minds.
It is.
It really is.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, that's a great point about Tom Schreiber. He's got 132 shots on goal. So when you look at that percentage, that's not great. But we've seen other MVPs in other leagues that get it doing the same type of production, shooting 50 times and still getting MVP. So we'll see how this continues to unfold. We love to be able to talk through our game picks MVP discussions, GOAT discussions, much more here on Daily Dive. As always, we hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. We'll see how our picks pan out as we get ready for all the action in Week 12. Crazy to think that it's Week 12 already. But more to come here on Daily Dive Monday. We've got to break down, recap all that we saw this weekend. So stay tuned, hit that subscribe button, and follow at Daily Dive Lax. For my producer, Mike, I'm Renee Washington saying have an awesome weekend, and we'll see you back here on Daily Dive for more on Monday. Adios, amigos.